Matthew 27. I have thought about a title, going back and forth. Kind of gotten bigger as I've thought on these things this past. Actually, I've thought on this a while. Kind of titled it like it's almost. I'm kind of like taking the Pharisees to trial. What they did know about Christ. Actually, I think it came up in Dad's radio program, Crucifixion of Christ, across something and just passed through it. I never seen it, so kind of I want to look at that for a minute here. Matthew chapter 27 and verse 57 is where we're going to start. You know here that Christ has been crucified. He has died, hanging on the cross. It's evening. And verse 57, and when the evening was come, there was a rich man of Arimathea, name of Joseph, who also himself was Jesus' disciple. He went to Pilate and begged the body of Jesus. Then Pilate commanded the body to be delivered. And when Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in clean linen cloth, laid it in his own new tomb, which had hewed out of a rock, and rolled a great stone to the door of the sepulchre, and departed. And there was Mary Magdalene and the other Mary sitting over against the sepulchre. Now the next day that followed, the day of the preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees came together unto Pilate, saying, Sir, we remember that deceiver said, while he yet lived, after 3 days I will arise. Command, therefore, that the sepulchre be made secure until the third day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away, and say unto the people, He is risen from the dead, so the last error shall be worse first. Pilate said unto them, Have a watch, go your way, make it such as you can. So they went and made the sepulchre sure, sealing stone, and set a watch. Setting everything in place here. This is, the Pharisees. They wanted that tomb watched. They were very something that I thought was kind of neat. In verse 59, Joseph took the body and wrapped it in clean linen cloth. It wasn't just any kind of cloth. Linen is expensive cloth. They had to make that. It wasn't, a lot of clothes weren't made from linen. I thought that was neat. It was linen. But he took the body, put it in his tomb, sealed it, or put the stone in front of it. But then the next day, the chief priests and elders were kind of, hey, got to make sure this thing's secure. And then in verse 64, when they're talking to Pilate here, and they said that the disciples would steal the body, and he arose, and they would say unto the people, He arose from the dead, so the last error was worse than the first. And I got to thinking, I've always seen that error thinking that they had messed up. I looked that word up. That's not what it means right there. It means deceiver. It means that he was wrong. But I think it's neat. They knew what Jesus had been going and saying the whole time. They heard him and what he was saying. But go on down to chapter 28. In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week, came Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat upon it. And his countenance was like lightning, and his raiment white as snow. And for fear of him, the keepers of the did shake and become as dead men. And the angel answered and said unto the women, Fear not ye, for I know that ye seek Jesus, which was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen, as he said. Come and see the place where the Lord lay, and go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead, and behold, he is gone before you to Galilee. There shall ye see him. Lo, have I told you. And they departed quickly from the sepulchre with fear and great joy, and did run, bringing his disciples word. And as they went to tell his disciples, behold, Jesus met them, saying, All hail. And they came and held him by the feet, worship him. Then said Jesus unto them, Be not afraid. Go tell my brethren that they go into Galilee, and there shall they see me. And when they were going, behold, some of the watchers came into the city and showed to the chief priests all things that were done. And when they were assembled with the elders and were taking counsel, they gave them large money unto the soldiers, saying, Say ye, the disciples came by night and stole him away while we slept. And if this comes to the governor's ear, we will persuade him and secure you. And they took the money and did as they were told. And this saying is common report among Jews to this day. We're going to stop there. I wanted to read the whole thing. I'm not going to tell you what jumped out at me until later, but I think it's really neat here in verse 3. And the keepers, the soldiers are standing before around the tomb. They're guarding the tomb. There was an earthquake, and this angel came and he rolled the stone away, and his countenance was like lightning, and his raiment white as snow. And they were so scared they couldn't move. They were as dead men. I thought that was really neat. They're dead. They can't move. And the angel answered the women. He starts talking to the women, and you see these women, they weren't afraid. You can take that. I think it's neat. I haven't done it, but you think about the amount of people that the angels have came and seen. They were afraid, but they listened. But these men were so scared they couldn't move. And I thought of something else. I'm going to chase a quick rabbit, I think, for a second. Keep your place there. But go to Exodus chapter 13. Exodus chapter 13. Here Moses is going to lead the people out of Israel, out of Egypt. Exodus chapter 13 and verse 20. And they took their journey from Succoth, and the encamped in Etham, in the edge of the wilderness, and the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of a cloud, and led them in the way, and by night a pillar of fire to give them light to go by day and night. And he took not away the pillar of cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from before the people. So here God is giving the people of Israel guiding and a light. But you go over to Exodus 14, verse 19. And here the people, Israel has come up to the Red Sea. They're encamped. And Pharaoh has sent his entire army. He's got all his chosen chariots, plus all chariots. He's going to take them back by force. And this, I combine this with that angel setting where those women were not afraid. But verse 19, and the angel of God went before the camp of Israel and removed and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud went from before their faces and stood behind them, and it came between the camp of the Egyptian and the camp of Israel, and it was a cloud and darkness to them, but it gave light by night to these, so that the one camp came near the other one by night. And that's the total difference. God being behind them, those Egyptians couldn't see anything. But yet Israel, they had light. They had comfort in that light behind them. Just like this angel, they were scared to death. These soldiers were scared to death of this angel. But these women they were afraid, but yet comforted by this angel, just like this light was to Israel. It's a different what we see as Christians and what the world sees. We see this Bible as truth. We don't follow it the way we ought to, unfortunately. But the world looks at this and they don't want to see it. They run from it. That was a little something I thought was kind of neat, a comparison that the two different ways. But here back in Matthew, these guys were so scared. And yet those women were comforted, and they went and told, and then Jesus met up with them. I've got lines on this, and the women listened to him. Verse 5 through 10, they listened to the angel, and then they went, and Jesus met with them. And in verse 11, now when they were going, behold, some of the watch came to the city and showed the chief priests in all things that were done. Here's some of the soldiers, not all of them. Some of them went to the chief priests because they were kind of in subject to them. And in verse 12, and when they were assembled with the elders and had taken counsel, they give large sums of money to the soldiers. Here, these soldiers, some of the soldiers went to the chief priests and some of them didn't. Where did they go? They went to the chief priest. They had evidence. Christ is risen. What you've done, what you tried not to do, he's done anyway. To me, the evidence against them is great. Because they were so scared they couldn't move. They heard the angel talk to the women. I guess that's the way I'm reading this. And they heard it. And they knew that in Galilee is where Jesus is going to go meet with them. But yet they give the money to the soldiers. You know, in verse 13, saying, they, his disciples came by night and stole, stole him away while we slept. You know, and if the and if this comes into the governor's ear, we will persuade him not to and secure you. And they took the money and did as they were told. And this saying is common reported among the Jews until this day. Even though, I mean, have you seen this same thing even today? People know the truth and don't want to hear it. They stay away from it. And I think that's, and you go on and you read in other places where I think it was Paul was talking to people, and one of the things that was mentioned that there was a lot of Roman soldiers that were now asking him, what should we do? And he said, be satisfied with the salary you're given. I think not all of them went to go see the chief priest. Some of the others went other places and they talked. I believe they told it. I think there was two things went out amongst them. But if you go over in chapter Matthew 27 and verse 50, and this is when Jesus was still on the cross. And Jesus, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent from twain, from the top to the bottom, and the earth did quake, and the rock rent, and the graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints which slept arose and came out of the graves after his resurrection, and went into the holy city and appeared unto many. Now when the centurion and they that were with him watching Jesus saw the earthquake and those things which were done, they feared greatly, saying, truly, this was the Son of Man, the Son of God. I never understood that scripture right there. I mean, I've heard it preached, but I believe that this part, what the centurion said was after Christ's resurrection. Because he was like, wow, I crucified him. I was over that, and how many of his watchmen, how many of his party or group had went and watched the tomb, had now come back and was talking to him. And the evidence is here against the Pharisees and elders. I mean, you walk into the temple, the first thing, it's rent. What was the most holy and holy place was rent. You could walk and see in. How would you like to be the first priest that walked in there and you're looking straight into the Holy of Holies? Because now you can, because Christ has went and paid that price. And the earthquakes, and the graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints which slept came. I don't know who all these people were, but wouldn't it be just amazing to have you're sitting down in the doors. There's a knock at the door, and you go open the door, and there stands one of your loved ones. You know, it was a witness, and it wasn't just Jesus that rose. There was many people. And I just think the Pharisees and the elders, they didn't want to see it. They didn't want to see nothing. It was their way. And I think this is going into another lesson as far as some other things. But you think about what did Jesus do to their livelihood? And you read where Paul, Peter, I can't remember the lady's walking behind them that's prophesying this is Jesus, well, whatever, I can't even think it out. But she was basically bringing profit to a couple other people. When they healed her, the demon went out of him. They knew nothing. He didn't know anything. And what I was just amazed at when I seen when these watchers went and talked to the chief priests and elders that they didn't want to see it. Just like Pharaoh, he didn't care. He wanted those people. He wanted Israel back, and he went with force. And for a quick side note, I looked up for just a second, just going to look at this for a minute. Joseph of Arimathea. Have you ever heard of him before? He's only mentioned 3 times in the Bible. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. And it was all at the cross. That's the only thing that's ever mentioned of him. He went and took the body. Now Nicodemus, he was mentioned in John, was the only place he was mentioned. In John 3, and he went to Christ, talked to Christ about who he was and all, and he was saved. For some reason, let's go to John chapter 7. Here, John chapter 7 and verse 50. Here they're having counsel. You know, they're talking about Jesus here because Jesus had just stirred so much up with the chief priests, the elders, the Pharisees, Sadducees. He had just tore their world up. But Nicodemus said unto them, He that came to Jesus by night, being one of them, doth not the law judge any man before he heareth him, and knoweth what he doeth? And they answered and said unto him, Art thou also a Galilean? Search and look, from out of Galilee ariseth no prophet. And every man went his own way. Nicodemus here had started to stand up because he had said, hey, I believe he was saved at this point in time because he, like, this isn't right. But I thought it was neat. Their evidence against them was great. I'm hoping, I hope that after all this had happened, that they finally seen that this was, but I don't think so. They were so strong-willed that they didn't want to see the truth. Because I know a lot of the priests, as the church started growing, a lot of the priests became part of the church because they believed, they had seen a lot of this. But there is a lot of evidence, but I just think that even the evidence that they seen, they didn't want to see. But how much of the evidence do we want to listen to? Things in the Bible we read over that we just don't want to do. But I thought it was kind of neat when on this here look in Galilee. They didn't like Galilee because of one person, and that was Jonah. This week, I'll finish it tomorrow. I started reading in Jonah about why he went to Nineveh, and that's why they don't like, because Nineveh was a city that they didn't like Nineveh. Jonah didn't either, but he went. But it's just like doing these Sunday school lessons. Kim says we volunteered. I don't remember the volunteers. But one thing, do pray for me in this as I continue the Sunday school. I enjoy it when it's mine. I dread it when it's not. But studying, seeing what God can show you. And that's something that, as Dad was going through the resurrection of Christ on the cross, that little piece popped out. Well, they seen it. Here these guys went and told. These soldiers went and talked to them. They didn't want to see it.